I just ended another Zoom directly from Moscow, where we have this sculpture of Elbe River. It's in actually in two places. One is in downtown Moscow, and one is on place like a memorial of World War II, similar to what we have in Washington, D.C., memorial to veterans of World War II. And now we have this what we call Western audience, and then hopefully this video Zoom from Moscow and this Zoom will be combined in one product, and then we will send you the Russian. You can use whatever you think is appropriate for joint fund. Okay, now in terms of the event, it comes at a very important time because in the past it was just regular ceremony, but now when we are kind of everyone's talking, we are on the edge of World War III, this is becoming, I think, even more important. It depends. Maybe today we have to talk not necessarily to recall what happened in 1945, but what we regular folks, I think some of us are like we called Joe Plumber. I think during the campaign with Joe McCain and Bush and others, they were talking about regular Americans like Joe Plumber. So let's assume we're just regular Americans and other Westerners and see what we can do. Well, and one thing is to, first of all, recall that during this meeting in Elbe, they talked about Elbe spirit, because it was a great time when Americans and Russians embraced each other, or dancing together, kissing each other, hugging, and thinking about that this is from new time when both countries and other allies will build a better future for everyone. Well, as we see, it didn't happen. But the spirit of Elbe is still alive. And it was actually recorded in the same German city of Torgau in 1985, when still Soviet Union existed, and Americans came and repeated what happened. It was reconstruction of what happened on April 25, 1945. And they pledged that they will use this Elbe spirit for themselves, for future generation, and this means that you do what we say win-win, that everyone wins. It's not like a hegemony of anyone. All of us are equal. God created us as equal creatures, and they pledged in '85, and it looked like it probably is going to happen because Gorbachev came as kind of a sign of from heaven, and he ended in Reagan Cold War, and we thought that in '91 a new era has arrived, and we believe that. And there were a lot of exchanges, even proposal for how the United States and Russia will be allies, not just partners, but allies. This was done under Gorbachev, then continued under Yeltsin and under Putin. I recall that in 2001, Putin was invited by George Bush to his ranch in Texas, and he presented Putin as a great Russian leader who we're going to build this new future, and the word Elbe spirit was mentioned as well. Didn't happen. Then another was glimpse of hope. Then in 2020, President Trump and President Putin issued a joint declaration. Again, they repeated those two words, Elbe spirit. Well, now we see that it didn't work again. So we're missing all those chances. And we don't have too much time left. Bulletin of Atomic Scientists says that we have only 90 seconds to the doomsday. So let's use maybe our ideas how we can revive this Elbe spirit. Maybe it's like a new movement and see what's going to happen. So this is my short introduction, and welcome to this Elbe Day, and let's see how this Elbe spirit can be. It's another attempt, maybe the third, fourth, fifth attempt, but it's still alive. At least all of us, I think, here who came still share this Elbe spirit. So, Matt, back to you. See how we're going to revive this Elbe spirit.
Yeah, thanks for those introductory remarks, Ed. And I think that this is a very important day. And I'm really happy that V and the Rogue News team agreed to host and stream this live. So there are some people watching, and there's going to be a lot more people watching the recording. Hopefully in Russia too. As you said, Ed, there's going to be a bigger Russian audience going forward. And I think for my part, I'm really happy that just this immediate grouping here is going to have this short conversation, sharing some thoughts and reflections, because as you pointed out, this was sort of the high point of U.S.-Russian relations, friendship, and the hope that was promised for a world of U.S., Russian, and Chinese-led development as a post-colonial, post-imperial world order. And I guess for my part, I had two quotes that I found by Henry A. Wallace that I want to just share as part of my contribution for the potential world that should have been, that was derailed. And I do think that tragedy, classical tragedy, is sort of the substance of history and how history has unfolded, because you see all of these moments of potential beauty and goodness that are disrupted time and again. And it really awakens a sense of, I think, a form of righteous anger in my heart, but a desire to not want to repeat this stupidity that's been holding us back from the potential greatness one could imagine of a world working in brotherhood and harmony for win-win cooperation, as we see once more being presented onto the scene of the world today amidst the collapse in the West of a major banking systemic collapse, but an emergence of a new type of way of thinking about foreign relations, about banking, about self-interest even, which is much more healthy and much more in harmony with the
real quick, dude, I'm trying to do a live session right now on Rogue, between Zoom and Rogue.
I think he should have been on mute there. Sorry, but this is the same spirit that we saw with FDR, with Wallace, with their international allies. So here's the first quote by Henry Wallace from 1944. It is vital to the United States, it is vital to China, and it is vital to Russia that there be peaceful and friendly relations between China and Russia, China and America, and Russia and America. China and Russia complement and supplement each other on the continent of Asia, and the two together complement and supplement America's position in the Pacific. This is 1944. Wallace is still vice president. Unfortunately, Roosevelt dies early. The protection that Roosevelt cast to a lot of his key allies who had a vision of an international New Deal expressed through the better, what the World Bank, the IMF, the UN could have been, but were not, was derailed, and Wallace was downgraded and soon expelled from the government. But before he was expelled under Truman, he said something that I'm going to end with for my part, where he warned that fascism, in a New York Times article, fascism in the post-war world inevitably will push steadily for Anglo-Saxon imperialism and eventually for war with Russia. Already American fascists are talking and writing about this conflict and using it as an excuse for their internal hatreds and intolerances towards certain races, creeds, and classes. So this shouldn't be a surprise. The warning was there for those who had a little insight into the nature of history and the flow of what was taking over the control of the Americas. And I'm hoping with the current resistance that is still alive, though a little bit too silent and a little bit too confused, both from the networks of the MAGA movement as well as the potential better Democrats around Kennedy. I'm hoping that something more coherent can converge on a peace movement, as you said, Ed, and that's how I'm just going to end my little contribution here.
Mm-hmm. Okay, it's open to everyone. Just raise your hand and.
I'm Roger Kotila. I'm the president of Democratic World Federalists.
And some people might be on mute, by the way.
Put out DWF News. Our point of view is a little more long range. We think we need a new United Nations because the UN Charter prevents us from getting peace. And in this discussion, I hope we can bring in the UN more and maybe get their help in some manner to get this breakthrough with the deep state. The other thing that comes to mind is we need a major media outlet to start talking friendship and to change this narrative of the deep state, which demonizes Russia, demonizes China, and is hell-bent to keep trying to conquer the world. So that's my 2 bits worth at this point.
Should we go around or? Okay, I'm Jeremy Kuzmarov. Yeah, I'm the managing editor of Covert Action magazine, and yeah, I studied U.S.-Russia relations, and I traveled a bit in Russia. And you know, in 2018, I published a book called with John Marciano, "The Russians Are Coming Again," because I was a historian of the Cold War, and actually, I found a kind of McCarthy type environment in higher education, and I was basically removed from universities for teaching, you know, what Matt was saying, you know, teaching about Henry Wallace and that there was an alternative for cooperation, and teaching about the horrors of the Cold War, whether U.S. you know, intervention in so many third world countries on the pretext of fighting the communists, whether with McCarthyism here at home and the blacklisting, and they didn't seem to want that being taught to students. And now I'm the managing editor of Covert Action magazine, and we've tried to cover the war in Ukraine from a critical point of view. Yeah, and in my book, I warned what I saw was that the new Cold War, the polar opposite of the Elbe spirit, was coming back, even, you know, harder than before. And there's so many trends, you know, being revived from the Cold War, from the dark ages of McCarthyism. And I've tried to warn in my book, "The Russians Are Coming Again," about how they exaggerate the Russian threat, demonize the Russians. And, you know, in my education, I studied Russian history. And it wasn't until I read a book by Ron Ridenour called "The Russian Peace Threat," which is a good book, I think. You know, it didn't get a lot of attention. But what I liked about that book was he spoke very positively about some Russian figure like Yuri Gagarin, and showed you know, so many positive developments, and so many, you know, people committed to peace within Russia. And I reflected back on my education, and almost everything I had learned about Russia was kind of negative, and all the negative things about communism. And I mean, some were true, but you know, every country has some bad things in their history, but nothing positive was ever taught, really. So yeah, there's this bias in education and the media. And yeah, I tried to warn in my book. Of course, not that many people may have read the book, but yeah, I at the end, I advocated for a unity of conservatives, and it doesn't really matter your political point of view on issues like taxation or other issues, but that people have to come together from across the political spectrum, and promote peaceful relations, and to counter this dominant narrative. And I did see something positive in February. I attended amidst the terror. I mean, we are living in, I think, a new kind of dark age, you know, as far as the political climate. On the other hand, there is some pushback. On February, I was at the Rage Against the War Machine rally in Washington, and I did see a very positive spirit there, and I saw groups of different political persuasion coming together, many conservative libertarian as well as more left-leaning Democrats who are all unified against the war in Ukraine and the huge military spending, billions of weapons that have gone to Ukraine. So I think that's something we can build off and try and tap into in this group, and I think there is the hope for a broader movement. And I think many are concerned about the threat of nuclear war, and the runaway arms race that's developing. So I think there is potential for a larger social movement to develop.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
There we are. Sound clear?
Yep.
I was going to say, coming from my part of Ireland, we produce a lot of religious people, but not many Trappist monks. Nobody takes the vow of silence in the part of Ireland where I'm from. I'm glad you put me on after Jeremy, because it makes it much easier for me. I agree with everything Jeremy had to say, first-class analysis. And I think it's especially worthwhile, Jeremy, to listen closely to what you said, because with all due respect, Roger, if we go your way, we will lose, and we have lost for 20 years, and we will continue to lose, because this is not an old-fashioned left versus right situation. It just is not. That is ancient, antiquated thinking that went out with the end of the Cold War in 1989. The biggest push for war unquestionably now comes from the liberals, the so-called soft left, which of course there's nothing soft about them. There's nothing traditionally left about them, but that's their label. That's how they see themselves. The Bidenites and the neoliberals, all the rest of them. And the counter push is out there. And as Jeremy says, it's coming from all over the place. The old left and the old right are both dead. Everything is splintered. I would play repeatedly and send to everyone I know, and again, I show my antiquated age on this, of course, Bob Dylan singing. Actually, Joan Baez does it better with her voice, but he wrote the words, the lyrics, the music. The times, they are a-changing. You'd better change now or you sink like a stone. I'm paraphrasing slightly here. Come all you congressmen, senators, please heed the call. See the writing on the wall. Bob Dylan only a year or two ago was validated with a Nobel Prize for Literature. These are powerful prophetic words. They are more true now than they were in the 1960s. We are seeing what we saw in the 60s and 70s, but on a much more profound scale if we live long enough to see it. And that is a complete restructuring of politics in the United States, a complete restructuring of political perceptions and alliances in the United States. I was discussing this with an old friend a few days ago, and we were and this is a guy on the ultra right, I would have said, a retired senior army officer, and his heroine was Tulsi Gabbard. He felt she was the most principled, intelligent, clearest, most strongly charactered person out there. And he also agreed that he liked very much, although he disagreed on a number of issues with him strongly, on the key issues of war and peace and restructuring of society and the economy, he also went with Robert Kennedy. And this is a conservative guy from the right of the army. Officer class talking like this. These are the kinds of changes we need, the kinds of perception changes that we need. And we're seeing it out there, but it's all scattered. And one thing Roger said, I think is crucial, but it's easier to say as an aspiration than to bring about. And that is, we've just seen Tucker Carlson fired from Fox. Great pressure was brought on Rupert Murdoch, who protected Tucker Carlson, let's remember, for 20, 30 years and is now in his mid-90s. What kind of pressure was brought to bear on a man like that, on a billionaire, on an Australian-American billionaire, who's supposedly one of the wealthiest people in the world, but is now exceptionally old and presumably frail? Where can we find a counter source on either the right or the left? And I stress here, we're looking at people from the new right and the new left. I find Elon Musk, for all the negatives you can see in him, is his own man. He's I would worry about his life expectancy prospects. He's saying too many things on vaccination and other things that are politically incorrect. He's stepping out of line too much. Tragic air crashes happen all the time, as you especially know, Matt, monitoring these things. But basically, we need to get, Roger is right on that. We do need to find or put together a new platform that we can defend against the pressures that will be brought to bear upon it. But we don't have it now. We're a long time away from getting it. But if we could get one up and running, then the nature of the debate and the political dynamics in America would change fast.
Thank you, Ed. Fox, I know you had something on your mind.
Yeah, I figured I would just jump in if no one else wanted to. But hi, thanks for having me. Privyet to the Russian viewers out there. It's a real honor to be included in this. I've always felt, well, first of all, I'll say that I'm from New York's Hudson Valley, upstate New York. I have a media project called Space Commune where I do documentaries, essays, podcasts. But yeah, it's an honor to be here because I've never felt anything but love towards the Russians. As a child growing up in the 80s and 90s, all the cartoons made the Russians the bad guys, right? All the movies and the cartoons made the Russians the bad guys, but I never quite understood that. One of my best friends growing up in high school moved here from Belarus, and he didn't speak a word of English. So, it was I got to know Russian people, and I have Russian heritage. I never quite understood. And then also, looking at the history of our country, our greatest moments in American history are when we worked together with Russia. Our American Revolution, the Civil War, World War II, which is what this event's about, which is great. We do much better things when we're working with Russia. Another thing too is that I think that what's unfortunate is that the American people are not allowed to hear Vladimir Putin speak. I think if they were allowed to hear the man speak, that they might change their opinion of him. He's turned into this monster in the American media, but when you hear him speak, he genuinely cares about his people. He's a principled person. He's smart. He's rational. And that's a breath of fresh air to hear, because here in the US, we're so used to our leaders. We have mumbling, bumbling Joe Biden. Since I've been around, right, every president in my lifetime has just been one after the other of bullshit and more bullshit. So to hear somebody who's coherent like Vladimir Putin is refreshing. And I think if the American people could hear a leader like that, could actually hear what he has to say, they'd say, wow, we could actually have somebody of this caliber, in our country. It might open people up to the potential that we have in our country. I think that's a big problem for Americans, is that we don't see we're taught to not see any kind of potential in the future. And we have to move away from that. Americans are so depressed and so sad. We know our country is going in the wrong direction. And as far as opening up relationship with Russia, I don't know how to get there, but I'm excited to work with people who want to get there, because I want to do everything we can. I certainly promote on my channel as much as I can. I promote friendship between America and Russia, and America and China. And I think that we need to join in with the emerging multipolar world. That's the only way Americans are going to save our country, is if we actually join with these other countries that are leading this new paradigm. So yeah, that's all I have to say for now.
In any event, thank you very much for having me here today. It's a pleasure to join you all. For you, if you don't know who I am, name is Dimitri Lascaris. I'm a lawyer by profession with about 30 years experience, and I spent most of that time being a class actions litigator, and really focused a great deal, and had to in my practice, on dispute resolution and learning to speak the language of dispute resolution in high stakes, complex disputes in which there were rather fiery emotions because people's reputations and large sums of money were on the line. And I've been appalled at the lack of appreciation in the, I hesitate to use the term, diplomatic corps of Western states for the need for a diplomatic dialogue and an understanding of how to conduct that kind of a dialogue. So I came here, actually, I'm now in Moscow, and I came here on April 1st for the first time in my life. I ran to be the leader of the Green Party of Canada in 2020. I finished second with 45% of the vote, and I was explicitly campaigning on my credentials as an eco-socialist. And there were numerous people who supported me who said, they urged me to drop that label, and I resisted. And I've come to view this whole question of left and right, and this is why I wanted to speak really, because the comments about it were quite interesting to me, that have been made thus far. I've come to view that distinction much more differently than I did at that time. And I'd like to think that I've matured in that regard, and really to sort of drive home how differently I think about that distinction today. I'll mention that yesterday in Canada's, I would say, leading right-leaning newspaper, it's called the National Post. It's the flagship newspaper of the largest newspaper publisher in Canada. They published a front page article attacking me as a Putin apologist, and claiming that I had come here to Russia in order to whitewash the crimes of the Russian government. And in it, to my amazement, the current leader of the Green Party of Canada, with whom I've had numerous, shall we say, intellectual differences over the years, equated me with the far right. And I wasn't, on the one hand, particularly surprised by that, but that was kind of the nail in the coffin for me of this whole, effort that I've been making politically over the years to identify as eco-socialist. And I think a light bulb went off in my head when I saw that in writing yesterday on the front page of the National Post. And I think the way we should be framing this discussion is not as a discussion about the left versus the right, because very clearly, the people who describe themselves as the center are the ones who are driving this existentially dangerous and corrupt and heinous, unspeakable war. And those of us who are typically associated as being on the fringes of the left and the right are driving the peace movement to the extent we have one today. And I think the way we should conceptualize this is actually as a distinction between extremism and moderation. We on the left and the right who are arguing for dialogue and peace are the moderates, and the ones who are holding themselves out as the center are the extremists. And that, for what it's worth, is the language that I'm going to be using henceforth. So thank you again for inviting me into this conversation.
Thank you, Dimitri.
I'd like to just add a point here. I don't want to cut ahead of anybody, but I'd like to just add, what Dimitri just said reminded me of something that just happened, which is that I don't know if people are aware, but there's a group called the Uhuru Movement. They're a small group of Black socialists in the South, located in the South of the United States. And they're facing prison time now for being labeled as Russian allies. They're being targeted. So now one of our most precious rights, which is freedom of speech, is now being impinged upon here in the United States just for being friendly towards Russia. And so now is a really important time to create these relations. And also, I was at the Rage Against the War Machine rally, and you're right, the left and the right, it's all bullshit. It's media spectacle. Most people in the United States don't hate Russia. So I think it's a matter of getting to the real grassroots of people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Jeremy, if you were saying a word just now, you're on mute.
I put in the chat because I just did an article on this. Is this man a Russian agent operating in St. Louis? It was just published yesterday about this case you were talking about, this Black group that was targeted and accused of being Russian agents. And it's sad because they've done a lot in East St. Louis. Yeah, he's from East St. Louis. And I live in Tulsa, and there's a similar problem where in the north of Tulsa, the Black community is really impoverished and underdeveloped. They had the Tulsa race massacre, and I think it's similar in St. Louis. And this guy's actually doing a lot. They develop Black-owned businesses. They build basketball courts, for kids, so they're not causing trouble and joining gangs. I mean, they're actually doing some really positive things, and now they're attacked as Russian agents, and they have to raise money for legal defense, so they can't help out their community. And it's sad. And this is what's going on. It's like another COINTELPRO. So and I also did an article I'll put on this leak with Jack Teixeira, and then they spin it to try and blame the Russians, and it seems to be some kind of undercover intelligence operation. with this, they invented this online persona of this Donbass Devushka, but she was actually a Navy veteran, an American. She had a fake Russian accent, and they were trying to claim, the Wall Street Journal was reporting that she was behind the leak. That's how Teixeira got the document. I think they were trying to spin it to make it look like Russia was leaking these documents that are embarrassing about the war in Ukraine. It's like, it's like in Vietnam, where the documents show the U.S. side is not winning, and Ukraine is air defense is limited, and the war is not going like they say, but they're trying to spin it like the Russians are behind this leak. So, and it just fits what we've been discussing, this long pattern of demonizing Russia and making it into an enemy, an evil force, and most of it is just manufactured.
Bruce.
First, Matt, thanks for inviting me here. And I do marketing for Chris Milligan at TrineDay.com, TrineDay Publishing, many, very, very. And I got my first book published a couple of years ago and started to do a lot of podcasting. And it just occurs to me the basics. The Nazification of the planet, of the West, the capture of definitely the United States by this tyrannical agenda, call it neocon, call it, the empire. You can see it through history, especially as you enjoy the work of Rising Tide Foundation. God bless you, Matt and Cynthia, and everyone around you. And the doomsday clock being at 90 seconds, the urgency of our times, just stating the obvious, the need to do all we can every single day to spread the word about the truth, the reality of the fraud, of the danger, of the corruption, of the clown show, and immerse, I think, as a common denominator for Americans. I'm an American and talk to the potential still of America as a foundational drum to bang. It's the ideals of the American founding, because they're hand in glove with the golden rule, and to challenge ourselves and everyone we can every single day to the utmost to embody those literally every second of every day. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And imagine we all have rights. Imagine that this world really, really works when we do consult with, negotiate with, honor each other's rights, and like adults handle the truth of the enormity of the evil that we're up against, and find and really ponder all that can inspire and give us hopes about the nature of reality, the power of thoughts, intentions, and prayers, from the mystical to the quantum physics. It's so urgent to bang these drums every single day as much as possible. A couple of tangible things. The TrineDay has sponsored a big project called the Roundtables. They're free Zoom events. Here's the resource, and you can learn about the following things. The resource is a site called valediction.net, valediction.net, tab called World Peace. There is a proposal for world peace based on economic justice. Someone was talking earlier about economic stuff. This is a celebration and a bringing forth of the old economics of Henry George from the 1800s here in the United States. His book, Progress versus Poverty, about taxing the land, taxing unearned income. There's also this charming new open letter to King Charles III on his coronation, challenging him to imagine the earth belongs to everybody and to do right by all of humanity, assuming that there's something inside that isn't a sold out transhumanist eugenicist hell-bent on depopulating the planet. And before the end or after the end, Matt, whatever you could do or provide or say about equipping us all to be in touch with each other, or just, because, I thought Jeremy's name was familiar. Boom, he says he's with Covert Action Magazine, that kind of thing. Dimitri, I took a couple notes on you, so just to find and follow each other. You'll provide all you can. Maybe it'll be in the show notes when this thing goes live. And happy Elbe Day.
Thank you, Bruce. And yeah, definitely, we're going to have everybody's links to their work in the description of the recording when the video is on Rumble and YouTube and everywhere else where it's being streamed right now. But we'll make sure that all of these links are right there. Dimitri also pointed out that he's been writing articles documenting his travels, his experience and observations in Kherson in Crimea, which are available on his website. So that'll also be very easy to find under this video in the description box. I wouldn't necessarily bet the farm on Prince Charles being necessarily the guy who's going to make the shift, but I do appreciate the spirit and intention. That's great. Alex.
Oh, I thought I was muted. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I very much enjoyed listening to everything that was said so far by Martin and by Fox and by Jeremy and Dimitri and Bruce. It shows that, okay, obviously on this call everybody's heart is in the right place. But I also think that the phenomenon is a lot broader than we appreciate, because as Martin said, we don't have a platform. Well, not in a formal way, but I think that in an informal way, we do have a platform, and I think that maybe that platform is a lot more powerful than we realize, because it's the silent majority of silenced people who, you know, are being actively dissuaded and intimidated from expressing their opinions. But I've been paying attention to the way people look at this big issue, and I think that people are wise enough to sense that the conflict between Russia and the West is extremely important, that it's not just a territorial dispute, that it's not just Russia being the aggressor and jeopardizing the, you know, the global order that has given us quote unquote 70 years of peace. And so I just wanted to point out several informal polls that I came across over the recent months, and I've seen many, but these are actually polls with very large numbers, and you'll see how people react, because these are all the pollsters are British or American Twitter or YouTube personalities, and so their audiences are, I think, predominantly Western audience. And you'll see that in spite of the heaviest propaganda campaign that we've probably witnessed ever, and the most aggressive campaign of demonizing Russia, this is how people actually react when they are not afraid to report their opinion. So there was a poll which simply asked, which side are you on, Russia or the Ukraine? And 73.6% of the people said Russia. And this poll, 37,000 people took this poll. Another poll asked, if you had to choose between Volodymyr Zelensky and Vladimir Putin, which one would you choose? 77.2% of people said Vladimir Putin. 41,000 people took this poll. Another poll asked, which side would you rather see win, Russia or Ukraine? 73.6% of people said Russia. 16,000 people took the poll. And last one, which was on YouTube it was a poll by George Galloway, and he asked, is the West to blame for the war with Russia? And 15,000 people responded. 95% of them said yes. They think that it's the West's fault. So I believe that our platform is us, you know, because we speak to the people who will listen. And maybe if we manage to change a couple of minds, then those people speak to other people who will listen. And I think that that's creating a chain reaction effect. And I think that over time, the the change of heart and the change of mind is I think overwhelming. So even if we are without a platform, even if they, you know, are so desperate that they will cancel their #1 most popular news anchor, being Tucker Carlson, they're still losing this battle. And, you know, when an idea whose time has comes to the fore, it is unstoppable. I do remember the end of the communist era in Croatia. The ruling party was desperate to keep things from imploding. Posters started to appear propagandizing people. Leaflets and stickers on public transportation would give you phone numbers to call if you heard somebody speak about, you know, things we shouldn't speak about and expressing thought crimes and so forth. It didn't help. Nothing helped. Everything. And, you know, recall, you know, in those days we didn't have the internet, but still, you know, the people in power had control over the courts, the police, the military, the media. They had probably much higher degree of control than the current regimes in power in the West, and they still lost. So I think that we are very much on the winning side, and I think that the outcomes are inevitable. And I think that when you strip the issues down to their essence, so you remove all these false narratives about Russia being an aggressor, Russia provoking the war, Russia being jeopardizing international law or rules-based society and so forth, I think that many people will come to recognize that actually between the United States and Russia, they are absolutely natural allies, and that alliance, I think, will happen again in the near future. So I believe that the meeting on the Elbe will happen again in a different form, but in a much more robust form. And I think that right now, the only thing that's standing in the way is the media and the current regime in power in Washington.
Mm-hmm. Amen. V, did you have a thought, or Ed? Sorry, if you, I don't want to.
Well, I think we are getting close to the end. A couple of announcements, but first, speaking about polls, I think at the beginning I mentioned about regular folks, and I wish people who do the polling that Alex mentioned ask another question. Do you want America to be hegemon? And what Biden, who by the way this morning announced he's going to run again as a world leader. So do you want America to be like this, or you want America to be just, you know, part of this great family of nations on a win-win basis, that we all live in peace and enjoy this planet? So maybe, Alex, if you know those people who conduct those polls, maybe this simple question, because I know that there are polls that between 70 and 80% of Americans think that country is going in the wrong direction. This is, no, it's a Gallup and other polls. But I wish that we had something more simple question. America is part of the family, or America the hegemon? And I'm really interested to see what they say.
I will try to get somebody to run that poll. I think that mine would be too small, but I think it's an excellent question, and I think I know the answer that most people would embrace immediately.
Well, this is our base. I also want to ask you, I put it on the chat, at 11 o'clock, I want you to transfer to another Zoom, and just, you don't have to spend your time, just introduce yourself, a couple of words, no more than like 2 minutes. Most importantly, to show the flag of your country, where are you, and that you agree with this Elbe spirit, because we want to produce a joint kind of film from this, as I mentioned at the beginning. And to conclude, Matt, just for a few minutes, Matt and I produced a video about Elbe, and which mentioned some of the things that we all do. So Matt, may I ask you just to push this link. I put it on the chat.
Yes.
And after that, if slowly move into another Zoom, only takes two minutes of your time. Say hello, and then congratulations. This is a great day. Maybe it's a really push for this Elbe spirit movement. We have to really have a movement. So far we have many people, but I don't think we have formal movement. Maybe this is a great thing.
Will the next broadcast be with translations in Russia, or will we be?
It doesn't matter. Say in English. It doesn't matter. You don't have to because translation it takes time. Technical things. Says in any language, French, Croatian. It's in language. Say just because Elbe spirit. It's everyone will understand. They want to show who is with us. You know, who is supporting this Elbe spirit. So language at this point is obvious.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for joining. Push the to YouTube.
All right, will do.
Bravo.
And this one's with the live orchestra, right?
was kind of a technical double sound. Okay.
Right.
May I just say that was extraordinary, and it was really quite moving. And how can I share it? I would like to share it as much as possible.
Yes, there's a link on the chat. There's a link. I'm sorry for some kind of a double sound. There was no sound technical thing. Okay, let's now try to link to another. Leave this one and go to another Zoom for a very short introduction. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Ed.
That was awesome.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.